Okay, guys, we are back here once again with our coach book, and we are on page 106, and we are looking at ecosystems. So if you wanted to follow along, we are on page 106. We are going to start up here with some organisms live on dry land, others live in wet places. But whether they live where it is dry or wet, all organisms have something in common. They depend on the place where they live to provide them with what they need. An ecosystem is made up of all of the living and non-living things in an area. Some living parts of an ecosystem are plants, such as trees, flowers, and grasses. Other living parts of an ecosystem are animals, such as birds, insects, and humans. Other organisms, such as bacteria, are also living parts of an ecosystem. Sunlight, water, soil, rocks, and air are all non-living parts of an ecosystem. So are the conditions such as temperature and the amount of rainfall. So remember that sunlight, water, soil, rocks, and air are non-living things along with the temperature and the rainfall. Okay, so yes, that needs that stuff. It does need the sunlight, the oil, but they aren't living things. Okay, so when I go down here and it says right here, ecosystems are made up of all of the blank and non-living things in an area. So ecosystems are all made up of the living and non-living things in an area. Sunlight, water, and soil, rocks, and air temperature, and the amount of blank are non-living parts of an ecosystem. And the amount of what? Second paragraph. Rainfall are non-living things. Okay? All of the living things in an ecosystem depend on one another. In the next lesson, you will learn how living things interact to get energy. Living things also depend on non-living things. All of the parts of an ecosystem work together to keep it in balance. There are many different kinds of ecosystems. Scientists divided them into two main types based on their characteristics. Terrestrial ecosystems are land-based ecosystems, such as forests and grasslands. Aquatic ecosystems are water-based ecosystems, such as lakes, ponds, and oceans. Some ecosystems, such as parks, farms, fields, and playgrounds, are made by people. Did you know a rainforest plant called a tank bromomald contains a tiny ecosystem? The plant collects water in its leaves. Young insects live in the water. Frogs leave their tadpoles there to feed on the insects. So, living things such as plants and animals work together with the blank things in an ecosystem. So, what do they live with? To keep it in balance, what do? They live with the non-living things in an ecosystem to keep it balanced. Ecosystems can be classified as terrestrial or blank water-based. So they could be terrestrial or they could be aquatic. Okay. We are going to come over here and look at terrestrial ecosystems. Forests are ecosystems that contain many trees. Temperatures in forests vary with the areas in which they grow. In general, forests are found in areas where the air temperature is mild and there is plenty of rainfall. Trees of different kinds grow in forest ecosystems. You can also find shrubs, grasses, ferns, and a variety of animals in a forest. Some forest ecosystems, including trees that lose their leaves each fall. These ecosystems contain animals such as bears, foxes, rabbits, deer, snakes, cardinals, and owls. Plants such as ferns, mosses, shrubs, and grass also grow in these forests. Other forest ecosystems are found where the temperature is colder. These forests contain trees that produce seeds in cones and leaf shapes like needles. These trees, such as pines and firs, do not lose their leaves in the fall. Animals that live in these forests include elk, moose, beaver, wolves, finches, and jays. On the other hand, rainforest ecosystems are found in a very warm, rainy place. These warm, wet forests are rich in plant and animal life. Animals that live in these forests include monkeys, panthers, snakes, and other reptiles, spiders, parrots, and toucans. So let's see if we can answer anything about terrestrial forest ecosystems here, okay? Blank are classified by temperature, rainfall, and types of trees, plants, and animals living there. So, blank are classified by temperature, rainfall, and the types of trees, plants, and animals that live there. Forests contain trees. Temperatures in the forest may vary based on where they grow. In general, forests are found in areas where air is mild and rainfall. Trees, different kinds of trees grow in the forest ecosystem. You can also find these other items, blah, blah, blah. The forest ecosystems include trees that lose their leaves, and then they have other trees, and the other forest ecosystems are found in temperature coolers. What are we talking about? This is all what? This is all what? Not just forests, but what are we really, really talking about? We are talking about ecosystems. Ecosystems are classified by temperature, rainfall, and types of trees, plants, and animals that live there. We can't say just forest. The reason we can't say forest because, yes, we have two different types of forest. We have the rainforest, we have the temperate forest, and that's great. However, that's not just classified based on that. All different ecosystems are based on these information. You need to know that, I could have plants and trees and different animals in the desert, but that's not an option. So ecosystems is the broad generic term there. Some forests called deciduous forests have leaves that lose their trees that lose their leaves each blank, but others called deciduous forests do have trees do not lose their blank. So some forests called deciduous forests have trees that lose their leaves each. When do they lose them? In the fall. But others called coniferous forests have trees that do not lose their blank. They don't lose their what? Their leaves, right? And we're very familiar with those in North Carolina because we have a lot of pine trees in North Carolina that do not lose their leaves. Think about southern pines. That's how it got its name, because there is a lot of pine trees over in southern pines. Blank forest ecosystems are warm and wet and many plants and animals. Blank forest ecosystems are warm and wet with many plants and animals. Blank forest ecosystems. Kind of forest systems. Yep. Rainforest ecosystems are warm and wet with many plants and animals. Blank are usually warm, flat, and grassy ecosystems with woody shrubs and animals such as prairie dogs, grasshoppers, birds, and bison. So let's look at the next paragraph at grasslands. Grasslands are ecosystems with fertile soil covered by tall grass. They are usually found in warm and temperate areas that get some rainfall, but less than forests. Some grasslands get more rain than others. Grasslands are usually flat or have gently rolling hills. Grasslands are also home to woody shrubs. Animals that live in grasslands include the prairie dogs, the grasshoppers, the birds, and the bison. So we kind of just read ahead a little bit when we were reading our next question here, and it says blank are usually warm, flat, grassy ecosystems with woody shrubs and animals such as prairie dogs, grasshoppers, birds, and bisons. So what lives there? Where is this at? What's the ecosystem called? Grasslands are usually warm and flat. Grassy ecosystems such as prairie dogs, grasshoppers, birds, and bisons. Aquatic systems are classified as blank or saltwater. So now we're going to go down here to aquatic ecosystems. All aquatic ecosystems include large amounts of freshwater or saltwater. Freshwater is the water that is not salty. The bodies of water can be lakes, ponds, rivers, oceans, or estuaries. Lakes are large bodies of fresh water surrounded by land. Ponds are smaller bodies of fresh water that are also surrounded by land. Ponds are usually shallower than lakes. Plants and algae grow along the edges, where the water is the shallowest. Ponds are home to animals such as snails, frogs, turtles, ducks, beavers, and fish. In lakes, you will also find large fish such as catfish, bass, and trout. Oceans are large bodies of salt water. They are divided by continents. Oceans have many types of ecosystems, depending on the conditions. Some areas of the ocean are shallow, and some are very deep. Some areas have saltier water than others. Some parts of the ocean are much warmer or much colder than others. So aquatic ecosystems are classified as blank or saltwater. So if they're not saltwater, what are they called? Freshwater. Lakes and ponds are freshwater that is surrounded by, lakes and rivers are surrounded by land. Oceans are large bodies of saltwater that are divided by, oceans are divided by what, guys? Last paragraph. Continents. And contain many types of ecosystems. Most organisms in the ocean live in the blank waters of the shore where sunlight makes the water warmer and there is plenty of food we have not gotten to. Let's turn the page. Most ecosystems live near the shore where the water is shallow. Here, sunlight makes the water warm and there are plenty of food. Organisms that live in shallow parts of the ocean include drifters, such as seaweed and jellyfish. Animals that are swimmers, such as fish, and those that are crawlers, such as crabs, also live in shallow parts of the ocean. Some animals, such as corals, are attached to the ocean floor. Many organisms live in the open ocean, far from the shore. Some float near the surface. Some, such as whales, turtles, and sharks, swim to the surface to find food or to get air. Others, such as octopus and tube worms, live closer to the bottom. Did you know that more than 100,000 different kinds of living things have been found in the oceans? Okay, so most organisms in the ocean live near the blank waters of the shore. Most live next to what kind of water? Shallow waters of the shore where sunlight makes the water warm and there is plenty of food. And blank is a body of water in which fresh water we have not gotten to. Okay. An estuary is a body of water in which fresh water from the river meets and mixes with salt water from the ocean. An estuary is affected by tides. A tide is the rise or fall of ocean water. A high tide causes more salt water to flow into an estuary. At low tide, salt water flows out. The organisms that live in an estuary must be able to live in water that contains different amounts of salt throughout the day. The fresh water that mixes with the salt water is rich in nutrients. Many different organisms in estuaries live in estuaries. These include shrimp, crabs, ergates, blue herons, muskrats, and turtles. A salt marsh is a flat area of land that salt water overflows. The amount of salt in the water of an ecosystem also changes as the tide rises and falls. The grasses and other plants of the salt marshes have special features to help them live in the changing water. So, a blank is a body of water which fresh water from the river mixes with the salt water from the ocean. What is it called? Bold. An estuary. Estuaries have more salt water during the blank tide than low tide. What kind of tide? High tide. Shrimp, crabs, ergates, blue herons, muskrats, and turtles are some organisms that are able to live in the estuary that contain different amounts of blank throughout the day. They contain different amount of salt throughout the day. Salt blank are flat areas of land that overflow with the salt water as the tide rises. Overflowing of salt, so what is it called? Bold. Salt marsh are flat areas of land that overflow the tides. Now, down here, I want you to copy this. And so I'm going to move this up and I'm going to let you see it. And you're going to pause me right now. And you'll notice that on the bottom of this, you don't see your you don't see your 1, 2, 3, 4. If you'll take a moment and make sure that you write in 1, 2, 3, and 4, we still will answer the questions. They were left out when Ms. Kaiser put them on this paper. So if you'll still take a moment, make sure this is copied right here into your thing, and I'm going to pause it so I can also do this also. Okay, so if you notice, I've already finished my bottom here, and now I'm going to turn to page 110. We're going to answer these questions here. And so we're going to go with number 1 here. Both forests and grasslands are A, aquatic ecosystems, B, terrestrial ecosystems, C, made mostly of trees, or D, always in cold places. Both forests and grasslands. Think about what they have in common. Number 2, which is a freshwater ecosystem? A lake, B, an estuary, C, a salt marsh, or D, the ocean. Number 3, an ecosystem contains ferns, rabbits, and many trees. Which best describes this ecosystem? Aquatic ecosystem, grassland ecosystems, lake ecosystems, or forest ecosystems? Ferns, rabbits, and many trees. Okay. And number 4, how are estuaries different from lakes, rivers, and oceans? Estuaries only contain salt water. Estuaries contain only fresh water. Estuaries contain both salt and fresh water, or estuaries are terrestrial ecosystems.